That's why when Portland offered me $40 million, that's why when Phil Jackson was trying to explain the goddamn triangle offense in my living room, I didn't go to New York. I went back to LA to get that bag so I could go play for my pops and I could play freely and be myself, which I actually ended up doing pretty fucking solid as a role player under Chris Paul, Jamal Crawford. That's what my role was. That's all I ever was in the NBA, was a role player. I was never a star. So this whole thing where I'm comparing myself to Draymond and this, Draymond's a Hall of Famer. And no matter what anybody on this podcast and no matter what I say or what anybody says, it's not going to change. He's a first ballot and he deserves that because he put in the work as his role. See, there's a difference. And this is the last thing I'll say. There's a difference between being a star and being a star in your role. Draymond was a star in his role, one of the best at it. He talks too loose and he talks with conceit in his voice when he tries to come at other players as if he's better than them. No. You've achieved more because you were a star in your role in a cast that Steve, the guy that hindered your career, placed you in and helped you and embraced you with a bunch of guys on a very talented team, one of the greatest teams ever assembled, that Warriors team. And that's why he's in the Hall of Fame and he deserves to be it. But when you start talking and how he did with Charles, or he starts talking about me, belittling my stuff, or other players, whoa, Dre. You talk about, oh, you need to play Nas one-on-one. But motherfucker, why don't you play me one-on-one, Draymond? Because you can't do no handoffs in one-on-one. You can't set no pick and roll in one-on-one. So all that extra talk is BS, and that's all my response was to, was calling me the biggest bailout. Yo, bro, have some wherewithal. Get outside yourself. Have some humility.
Welcome everybody to the Sports Culture, all things sports. It's Jay Bamfo, and we gotta talk about Draymond Green. But before we get into that, like, comment, share, subscribe, and thanks for your support. So I just made a video about Draymond Green, and here I am again, having to address his foolishness. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, Draymond had a back and forth between himself and Austin Rivers, in which Austin Rivers made him look like a complete idiot. And now he's in the news once again because he has something stupid to say about Charles Barkley.
Sports are for young people. You hope to have a great long career, but sports, nobody wins when they're 37, 38.
But you said what you said. I want to hear if he believes what you're talking.
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal is just to not look like you in the Houston Rockets uniform.
Yeah.
Is ultimately the goal for us. Like, we don't want to.
What does that look like?
Did you see it?
I'm just asking.
I saw it. I mean, so, you know, we're always going to try to compete. When you win championships, the goal will always be to try to reach that level. Can we get back to that level? Listen, to your point, Jimmy's going to miss a lot of next year. Moses is going to miss a lot of next year. That's $70 million. $75 million of a, $160 million payroll. So it's going to be tough. But make no mistake about it, the goal will always be to compete at a championship standard level. Whether we win a championship or not, I think as you get older, you have to redefine what's success, right? Still the most sellouts in the NBA. Still the most national TV games in the NBA. And you just want to give yourself a chance. Success may not be for us at this point a championship, right? That's the way it goes. And so I think understanding what is success at this point is key for us. Knowing and understanding that it may not be realistic to win a championship, but can we continue to build to that so that once we leave this organization, it's still in a great space of where they have that pedigree and they can try to build on that.
What a complete idiot. Notice after what he said about Charles Barkley, nobody laughed. Yeah, it just wasn't funny, and it was actually really disrespectful. So Draymond wants to paint Charles Barkley as a ringless legend who hung on too long in the NBA. But the problem is, Draymond is fundamentally wrong, and not just about Barkley's time in Houston, but about how the history of the game actually works. So in this video, I'm going to break down why Draymond's attempt to rewrite history failed, why the stats prove Charles Barkley in Houston was still very good, and why this specific brand of arrogance is actually why Draymond is going to struggle as a mainstream broadcaster once he retires. So let's start with the Rockets uniform comment. Draymond was implying Barkley was trash with the Houston Rockets. But if you actually look at the numbers, that's far from the case. In Houston, he averaged 16 points per game, 12 rebounds, and 4 assists on 48% shooting from the field. He actually led them to the Western Conference Finals in his first year there. But when you talk about Draymond's stats to compare, it's hard not to laugh. Draymond has never averaged 15 points per game in his career. He's never averaged 10 rebounds per game in his career. So to suggest Barkley was a failure with the Rockets, it just shows how out of touch Draymond Green is when it comes to NBA history. Also, you could blame ring culture, because if Barkley had one championship on his resume, no way Draymond would outright disrespect him in any way, shape, or fashion. Now, if you know anything about basketball, you know that Charles Barkley and Draymond Green had entirely different roles in the NBA. Draymond was a glue guy and a third or fourth option on those Warriors teams. Barkley, on the other hand, was the system in which teams were built around his skill set. In Philadelphia, he was the number one option. In Phoenix, he was the MVP of the league. And even in Houston, alongside Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler, he was still a primary focal point. Draymond was out of line, and I believe it's situations like this that will hinder his media career. For years, inside the NBA had been grooming Draymond to be the next Charles Barkley. Even though he hasn't retired yet, Draymond is on network TV as an NBA analyst. It's obvious. He's been in audition mode for the past 3 years. But there's a reason why he won't be the next Charles Barkley in the media. He just takes himself way too seriously. In media, you have to be able to laugh at yourself and be vulnerable. That's Barkley's entire brand. The Hall of Fame player who wasn't able to win a championship. He's okay with that, and he's actually used that to create humor and a connection with the audience. Draymond, he just can't do that. Every time he's challenged, he retreats to, I have 4 championship rings. Shaq used to do that as well, but over time, he's gotten better at laughing at himself. Now, at the end of the day, Draymond is going to the Hall of Fame. No question about it, and nobody can take that away from him. But when you come for a guy like Charles Barkley, you got to bring facts and not just ring talk. Barkley's bad years in Houston are statistically better than Draymond's best years in Golden State. Draymond, you got to put some respect on Charles Barkley's name and just relax a little bit. Now, I know my opinion is not the end all be all, so let me know in the comments. Was Draymond out of line when talking about Charles Barkley's career, or is everybody just blowing it out of proportion? Now, with that being said, like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.